So there's all different kinds of penetration tests, and whether you're an ethical hacker that's looking to get into the world of pen testing, or you're a business who wants to look at options for hiring a company to come in and do a pen test, I wanted to break down the different types of assessments that you might see, and what's commonly involved with a pen test of each assessment type. So let's take a look at them. Now, obviously, you've got your black box, white box, gray box type of assessments, and that's just a term in the industry that's used to determine like how much information you know about the target. But what I wanted to talk about was really the different types of assessments, and I think that this is what's really cool about pen testing. If you're someone who's wanting to get into the field, is you might have a particular interest, right? Maybe you like mobile apps, or maybe you like networks, or maybe you like web applications. And once you start hacking them, you might find some things are more fun for you to hack than other things. So that's what's really cool, is much like in any aspect of IT, there's so many different niches you can find yourself fitting into. So my personal favorite, and I know some other people in the industry, like Heath Adams, the cyber mentor, he talks a lot about internal and like Active Directory network testing. That's one of my favorite too, and I think that that's because I come from more of like a sysadmin type background. But network testing is really, it's critical. It's an important thing, and it plays a vital role in a company's security posture. So a network test can be anything from internal, inside the network. Maybe we're mimicking or simulating a insider threat, or maybe once a computer's been compromised through a phishing email or something, we got a way inside the network. What can we do? Can we pivot to other machines? Can we escalate on that machine that we're on? Can we get domain admin if it's an Active Directory environment, right? So that would be an internal network assessment. External network assessments are from the outside. So we're saying we're a hacker, might live in another country, might live in a different state, might be across the street, but we're seeing what's happening from the external point of view. So this is over the internet. The cool thing about network testing is oftentimes, you can work on them remotely. You don't need to physically be there. Now, some clients may prefer that you are physically there, you plug into the network, you perform your test that way, at least for an internal assessment. But for the most part, you can usually ship a laptop, drop it on their network, or maybe they can spin up a VM that you remotely connect to, and you perform your assessment that way. So it's a lot cheaper, I would say, in the sense that you don't have to necessarily pay like travel costs and stuff like that, versus an assessment where it does require a physical component. And then there's web applications, and I wanted to put that second. Honestly, it probably should have been put first, because in 2020, web applications are like the bread and butter for almost any pen testing firm. Even if you're doing like in-house pen testing, most likely if you have an in-house pen testing team, you've got a handful of web apps that you're testing. From what I've talked with, and this is just numbers that a few different companies I've interviewed with have thrown at me, but they say that about 70% of the work that they get in modern day is web application work. So this is stuff like you go to a website and, like Nike has an e-commerce website, right? That would be like a web app, or any e-commerce site, or any website that has any functionality is a web app that needs to be tested. And so there's a particular skill set in looking for these type of vulnerabilities that are very different than looking at the type of vulnerabilities that exist in a network. And so there are the OWASP top 10 list of vulnerabilities, and every year OWASP creates a new top 10 vulnerability list for web applications. This would be things like cross-site scripting or injection attacks like SQL injection, cross-site request forgery, or server-side request forgery. These are vulnerabilities that live on the functionality of like a web application. Now, with that said, during a network assessment, you might come across a web server, and that web server may be hosting a web app. And so you've got to like walk a very fine line between crossing over from a network pen test to a web application pen test, right? And so if you're just doing a network assessment and you come across a web app, you might enumerate it a little bit. You might look to see what services are running on that box. You might see what devices that box is talking to, but you're not likely going to be actually trying to perform like SQL injection or cross-site scripting or any of the web app type vulnerabilities. You're going to be looking to see, can I get a shell? Can I get like remote code execution, or can I compromise the system, or is it running outdated technologies? But you're not actually going to be trying to exploit the functionality of the web app itself. So that's important to know. If you're a business and you're looking to hire an outside pen testing company to come in, and you think, oh, I'll just buy a network assessment, that'll include everything, that's not true. In fact, if you have web applications, you probably want to buy both, a web app assessment in addition to a network assessment, because it's important to know if the network your web app is hosted on is really secure. So then we've also got social engineering, and this is one of the funnest, in my opinion, type of assessments that there are. There's many forms that social engineering can take, but overall, it's typically just hacking the human, right? And so instead of hacking technologies, you're trying to trick people into doing something that they probably wouldn't do if you otherwise were telling them the real reason behind doing it. So this could be like a phishing email where you're trying to get them to enter their password to a malicious website. It could be a phone call, or over the phone they call it vishing. It could be on site. You could go on site with this and try to trick people into letting you access parts of the building that you shouldn't be a part of. Maybe the server room, or maybe like the CEO's office. So social engineering is really, really cool, and oftentimes it can be non-technical. Like, you don't necessarily need to have a technical background. You don't need to understand how web apps function and how to break them, or even how networks function, in order to be successful as a social engineer. So there are companies that completely only do social engineering. And so if that was something that you were interested in, it is a form of pen testing, and if you don't have a technical background but you're good with people, it could be a good fit. In addition to social engineering, we've got physical assessments, which, again, there's a physical component to social engineering sometimes if you get on-site physical access in scope. But then there's actual, just straight up physical assessments, and that's where you're not trying to hack the human, you're not trying to hack computers, you're trying to hack the physical security controls. So this would be things like, are there blind spots in your camera system? Can I pick a lock, or am I able to bypass some sort of alarm system or locking mechanism a different way? So physical pen tests, they're not technical necessarily in the same sense that like someone who hopped on and was trying to hack a network would be technical, but they could still be very technical in the type of ways that you're breaking into buildings. And so that's another type of assessment that some companies, that's solely what they do. What's left is kind of more, you got wireless assessments, which honestly I don't think are super common. Basically, you've got to be on site and you're just testing for vulnerabilities in the wireless network. Can you break the Wi-Fi password? Can you perform man-in-the-middle attacks against other clients on the network? Those type of things. And then we've got more of like niche, I think is how you say that word, niche assessments like cloud or mobile applications. And an API, like by far this is not an exhaustive list. But these are some of the most common ones that you could see or typically find. So cloud would be AWS or Azure or the Google Cloud, where you're testing a lot of the same things I just talked about, but you're just testing them in the cloud infrastructure because it is set up very differently when it's in the cloud. So having a cloud background, if you're looking to pivot into a pen testing role, can really help you be a strong suit for this type of niche assessment. And then mobile applications, in a way, they can be looked at like a web application just from a mobile device, right? But because of that, there's very different underlying technologies that run, and it's another niche that we frankly need more people to be experts in. So if I was starting over and I was just looking at becoming an ethical hacker for the first time, and I'm trying to set myself up for the easiest opportunity, not saying that web apps are easy, but I would probably start learning web apps first. And the reason I say that is I think it's easier to find a job in the web app space currently because that's where all the demand is really, really at. If you have a networking background, by all means, like there are network pen testing opportunities out there. But if you don't have web apps as a foundational knowledge, you might have a tough time finding a position. So if I was starting over, I would start there. There's all kinds of cool resources. If you're curious, I'll be happy to make another video on web application based resources where you can go to learn how to do web app pen testing. So that's it. I hope something in this video was valuable to you. And again, whether you're just trying to figure out how to scope your pen test engagement that might be coming up, or you're an aspiring pen tester, I hope either way I've taught you something. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me either on Twitter, hit me up in the comment section, whatever you want. I'd be happy to connect with you. So anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next video.